Welcome to the Unscripted podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Nicastro. Today, we are going to be digging back into the recent research that Future of Field Service and Simon and Kucher conducted on service growth and commercial excellence in field services. I'm excited to welcome to the podcast today Vivek Swaminathan, who is the Director of Products and Solutions for Digital Workplace Services at Unisys. Vivek, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Sarah. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you. The listeners may have heard, we did one of these episodes a few weeks back with Sasha from Tetra Pak, getting his thoughts on this research that we conducted and some of the points that surface. And I think it will be really interesting in the coming weeks and maybe even months to speak with some leaders across different industries about how these findings related to, you know, how service growth is perceived and what the challenges are and what the opportunities are, just kind of see how the findings reflect to people in different spaces. So really excited to get your take today. The
Absolutely.
sentiment of the research was quite positive, but one of the points that you surfaced is that field service is critical, and it's specifically designated in the research as a opportunity for strategic differentiation. But a lot of organizations are still treating field service as a back office function, a cost center, if you will. What do you see on this point?
It's a great question, right? It goes back to why I'm in Unisys. The first time that I was interviewed at Unisys here, and I was talking about the role. Uh, it was specifically for field services. It was specifically for that space. Um, Field services has always been the face of IT. That's what we even write in our proposals, right?
Hmm.
Whether it's a store opening, a data center go live, or a network cutover, uh, one single visit by a technician could raise all sorts of escalations, real business impact, right? Uh, there are organizations who still treat this as a back office function. Uh, they need to treat this as a core part of IT,
Hmm.
not just plainly as a function wherein somebody's coming on site and doing something. That person who's doing the job uh, has is basically staking the reputation of the organization, is staking the CSAT, is taking multiple factors, right?
Hmm.
So whether it's an uptime, whether it's a customer experience, it's a launch, uh, it's very important to keep in mind that this is no longer a back office anymore. It is absolutely the face of IT. It is it's paramount to keep in mind in terms of experience, not just customer experience, but employee experience as well, right? Jensen keeps talking about the fact that we need electricians, plumbers, and whatnot. Uh, it is the age of the field services technician, is what I would say.
Yeah, I love that. Vivek, please forgive me. I realized you and I were chatting before we started, and I dug right in without asking you to first tell everyone a bit more about yourself. So, can
It's
you
okay.
just tell everyone anything you would like about you, your background, and your role at Unisys?
Sure. So I started my career as a service desk agent, doing application support for a large bank in North America. And from there, I started doing data center administration work for storage area networks, right? It was called SAN at those point of time. Then I did my studies and then got into the pre-sales and the transition aspect of my role, which involved solutioning, modeling, pricing, and whatnot. And had the opportunity to lead a couple of large projects globally, uh, overall workplace, be it service desk, be it field. And then, almost a couple of decades later, here I am in Unisys, leading the field services solution management. So yeah, it's been a great journey so far.
Mhm.
And, events like where we bumped into was also fantastic because that gives so many, people a platform to meet up. So yeah, I mean, happy to be here and
Yeah.
loving this. Yeah.
It's a space where there's rarely a dull moment. There's
Yeah.
always something happening, something changing, something shifting, and that makes it a space that is exciting to maintain a career in over, to your point, decades. So, really good. I want to go back to the point you made about the disparity that exists between sort of organizations saying that they recognize how critical field service is, or field service is a path to differentiation, but then not really treating them as such. And I think it's so important to consider the scope of what field service can do beyond installing or repairing things, right? So, you mentioned they are, such a huge part of the brand experience. They're such a huge part of the customer experience. And after years and years and years of doing this, one thing that people say time and time again is service is a people business, right? And so we're living in a technological age. And I think, that's an interesting conversation about what technology can do and take on and even take over versus what pieces of the service experience need to remain quite human. But I just think we can't underscore the breadth of what these individuals do and represent when they are with customers. So I think it's such a good point. And if we're going to, as the research indicated, point to field service as a path to differentiation, we need to start matching better the internal thinking and actions to that statement, right? You can't say that that's the path, but then continue to operate in a way that sort of acts as though it's an afterthought, or it's, just this operational, activity.
Spot on, right? I mean, uh, tools are the backbone of today's field services technicians.
Hmm.
Maybe 10, 20 years ago, it was just a field tech doing an install, getting a physical signature on a piece of paper and just leaving the site, right? Uh, Today, it is about ensuring that the tech has accepted that ticket. Tech has captured evidences on that ticket. It's about you know escalation to a customer or coordination with the customer in case there's a clarification required on that particular ticket. Uh, it, it, it's very important that the human is in the loop. The
Hmm.
human should be out of the loop, right? And our CEO also always advocates for the fact that uh, uh, the technology should be augmenting a human. It shouldn't be replacing a human. So
Hmm.
that's exactly what is so important. And there is so much of work around tools that's going on internally today, uh, from a technician standpoint and from an end customer standpoint. I generally have a slide in my deck, which is a what if slide, right? So one is the internal value to a technician, and the other is the external value to a customer. So a customer can always come back to me and say, you have all these features, so what? Right?
Hmm.
So the so what slide, sorry, yeah. So that's exactly what it is. And it's very important to keep both of those aspects in mind when you're either implementing a tooling solution, or trying to invest in something. So the ROI is has to be thought of in multiple different dimensions.
Yeah, absolutely. So the second area of research that I wanted to talk about is around, the pricing model in service not having caught up to the value being delivered. So, what do you see in sort of this transition? Because I think this is an area that a lot of organizations are struggling with, how to kind of reconcile um, what service looks like in today's landscape and how that might necessitate changing the way that commercial offerings are structured.
This is such an important point because I remember, actually putting it into practice last week on a live deal. There is a ton of value in the work that the field techs are doing today. Is that factored or is that reflective of the number that we are putting in our proposals? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
There are multiple ways and means and controls how we can enforce this, right? Uh, I mean, talk about a typical SKU based model. It has a clear entry criteria, the activity itself, and the exit criteria. So once you define boundaries and once you have your pricing in a structured manner, I think things become a little way easier.
Mm-hmm.
The key here in this point is the execution should match the contracting.
Mm-hmm.
That's very important, because if there is mismatch in either of the areas, then that's where all the problem begins, because then you have things like scope creep, you have things like that the tech was not informed that they have to do things like that. So that is a very, very important point, is what we see, and we are actually putting that into practice right
Mm-hmm.
now. So yeah, fantastic question.
Yeah. So I'm curious if you have thoughts too on, how we continue to revisit pricing in situations where value is, maybe level, maybe expanding, but looks different than it did before, right? So I think a lot of organizations, if they're starting to look at, better remote resolution or, different self-service options or, ways to automate what formerly was always someone on site, they struggle with this idea of the customer saying, well, you're not here as much, so we should be paying less. Do you see that struggle, and how are you working through that?
Yeah. So one of the best ways to deal with such scenarios is to ensure or to articulate the exact value that you're giving the customer.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite straightforward. For example, if I am trying to automate 15 to 20% of the activities for an end customer, uh, I can always go and tell them that, look, I have saved your end user 500 hours in a month, which has helped you maybe manufacture one new car per month,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. I'm just giving you an example, right?
Yeah.
Or manufacture x number of units of whatever it is that you do. Transferring this value back to the customer is what will raise lesser questions
Mm-hmm.
and get that buy-in as well, uh, much more easily from the customer,
Mm-hmm.
is what we have seen. Because otherwise, if it's just about left shift, if it's just about a simple cost optimization
Mm-hmm.
program, uh, that that is 2020, or that is 5 to 8 years old.
Yeah.
It's not very effective anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
it's about how you put yourself and how you wear that hat of the customer,
Mm-hmm.
and then you kind of look at the problem. That's
Yeah.
extremely important.
Yeah. I brought that up, Vivek, because, in the research, there's a whole section around value selling and,
Mm.
understanding that I think this is an area that a lot of organizations really need to dig deeper on and reflect on, because it's not staying still, right? I mean, we're only going to look to do more remotely, digitally, with AI, et cetera. And I know from the conversations I've had with yourself and with Patricia, Unisys does a really good job of looking at this through the lens of overall value of the relationship, not just time on site. And looking at that more holistically and starting to work on how that overall value is articulated to customers is just really, really important. Um, so you mentioned the importance of execution. And so, you know, what what are your thoughts on, you know, the balance between having a good strategy and executing that strategy well? And how do you handle that in your role?
Yeah, you can have the best strategy in the world, but if your execution fails, uh, it's of no use having a good strategy. It's important to understand from a field services perspective, the technician is at the center, right? So was the technician aware of what the ticket was about? Was the technician informed? Was the technician prepared? Was the technician trained? Did they have the right parts? Uh, we have been doing such things for decades.
Hmm.
Uh, ensuring the right tech is at the right location with the right knowledge, with the right part, and whatnot. Uh, First time fix is a very important metric that's measured in these scenarios. Obviously, CSAT as well. There are multiple types of flavors of scenarios that we can look at. Like for example, if it's a traditional break fix
Hmm.
or an incident, right? That is one type of scenario. If it's a install, if you're talking about installing 5,000 routers on rooftops of a quick service restaurant, right? Uh, the nature of the field services plays a very important part in how you approach that problem. That is the reason why execution, uh, although it has a certain framework, but the context of that particular deal is extremely important. That is what I believe. That
Hmm.
determines the success or failure of that particular project.
Yeah. I think this is an area that I think is really interesting because you mentioned we've been doing these things for decades, right? This idea of, does the technician have the right knowledge, the right part, the right skills? Are they on time, et cetera? But there's still plenty of scenarios where it's not happening the way it needs to. It's not, solid execution. It's not done really well, really consistently. And the the words of caution that I've been trying to give our audience lately is that, for anyone still really striving for operational excellence, like, you're striving to meet what today is like the bare minimum expectation, right? Because
Yeah,
it used to be that those things, high first time fix, on time arrivals, like, those were a path to differentiation. And today they are an expectation, right? So that is a
exactly.
result of how technological advancement has enabled companies, that we all interact with regularly in our personal lives. Amazon, Uber, those are two that get
Yeah,
used a lot, but there's dozens or hundreds of
yeah,
experiences we all have, right? That give us real-time visibility, and so our expectation has increased. And I think in a lot of industrial settings, or a lot of industrial organizations, there's still this sentiment that that expectation isn't fair in these environments, but it doesn't matter. Like, it just is the expectation,
exactly.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
So, you can't expect a gold star for a first time fix if that's
yeah.
what customers have come to set as sort of the foundation of what good looks like. So it's a tricky time because I think there's a lot of companies that are still really trying to catch up to what now has become the
The
barrier or the
baseline.
bar,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and now, you know, you need to get there and then be looking at, okay, and now what else, right? And so, yeah, it's again an area that it demands some real attention and reflection.
It's funny you say that, because it's very important to keep in mind, like I said, whatever tool you're implementing, whatever use case you're implementing, how relevant it is to your customer. That is the
Hmm.
first thing that you need to ask. It may sound very cliche, but it's as simple as that. What is the ROI that you are going to realize on it, right? What is the benefit that the customer is going to get?
Hmm.
Is it a quantitative? Is it a qualitative? Not all features can provide quantitative benefits, right? As much as we would love to, but that is something that you need to map out, you need to determine, and accordingly then approach that, right? I mean,
Hmm.
getting socializing that with the customer as well. If you have a great relationship with a customer, uh, you can just tease that feature with the customer, saying that, look, this is what we're trying. And then if they bite, obviously then go for it and try to get that advocacy, and have that
Hmm.
advocates. Because if a customer demand comes externally, then it's much easier to drive that internally as well, right?
Yeah.
It's usually that. But yeah,
Yeah.
but great points. Yeah, it's very important to keep in mind wearing the hat of the customer is what I would say.
Hmm. Yeah. And there's just, you know, this reality, right? That perception is reality, you know? So customer perception is reality. It doesn't matter, you know, they don't care about the circumstances that are causing that reality. They don't care
Yeah,
that it's, you know, you have technical debt and you have to figure out X, Y, or Z. You know, you just have to figure it out. And it's just that's just what
yeah.
is necessary. Um, while we're talking about digital, I think you know, there's a really important point here about the fact that I've been referring to it as digital sophistication, right? Because like we've talked for years about digital transformation, but the thing that's tricky about that term is I think it gives you this connotation that you transform and then you're done, but in reality the transformation is continual, right? And so I feel like there's sort of this core element of digital transformation that is this foundational piece. And then really what the effort should be around today is adding sophistication to that, looking at where you incorporate more intelligence to really do things differently. And so, you know, the goal though should be around growth and scalability and what is possible, not only around efficiency and cost reduction, et cetera. And I think this is such an important point. So, how are you looking at this in Unisys today?
Um, so we've touched upon this just a while ago, right? But just to elaborate, a tool need not be implemented just to reduce cost and admin effort. The experience is something that absolutely needs to be kept in mind. Our good friend John Carroll always says, uh, EX improves CX,
Hmm.
right? Employee experience always, improves customer experience. So that also helps in providing a premium, charging a premium for your services,
Hmm.
and new commercial models, right? There are multiple models that you discover because a tool can provide a certain set of features. What came out from the research, from the research that you alluded to just a while ago, is that it's not just about efficiency.
Hmm.
It is about making the life of a technician easier. It is being able to kind of give them that assurance that they are not alone in the field,
Hmm.
and that unlocks a completely new level of synergy, if I may say so,
Hmm.
like the human and the technology, right? So
Yeah.
human machine collaboration is what we like to call it at Unisys. So that absolutely unlocks a whole different level of synergies there. Like I mentioned, the tech is one aspect of it. The customer is another aspect,
Hmm.
right? So, what is the benefit to the customer? What is the advantages to the customer? From a growth perspective, internally, uh, if you execute well, if you do a good job of integrating the workflows, automatically, you start getting more visibility and thereby more work.
Mm-hmm.
There was a feature that I remember we were, I think it's live within Unisys, is that if a tech goes out in the field today, uh, the tech has the option of looking at a particular uh, uh, at their environment and giving back feedback internally to our account teams, saying that this is a potential sales opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So, like a tech has an opportunity to raise a lead,
Mm-hmm.
create a lead from the field, right? So that is also something that we are piloting at Unisys. Uh, there are multiple ways in which you can look at growth, right? So, like I mentioned, the tech is also a point because they are in the customer environment,
Mm-hmm.
and that is a great source of data for us. Uh, good CSAT, good feedback as well, good recommendations is definitely something. So, like I said, efficiency, cost, uh, getting better at admin work is definitely one part, but managing the end-to-end experience is where you kind of get the bang for the buck.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's another important point because I think there's huge risk to organizations that are really just kind of rushing straight to, how can we use AI to cut costs? How can we use AI to maximize efficiency without looking at the bigger picture? I think there's so many opportunities, to your point, to look at in the employee journey, in different functions, really. Where are these points of inefficiency that cause frustration, that waste time, that we can apply technology to help streamline and ultimately make these folks happier and allow them to spend time on more important things, right? And I think that's it's a great way to focus effort instead of just being enamored by cost savings or reductions in and for failing to see what else would be possible, if you were looking at how you can use those resources more strategically. We know that field technicians specifically, it's there's a talent gap. It's hard to hire at the rate that we need to, and so it's really important to look for ways to take the manual, arduous parts of that job out that aren't crucial and they don't enjoy anyway, right? To allow them to do more. So yeah, it's really good. And the last point is, this idea of service as a growth engine, not a cost to manage. So, what does this shift in mindset look like at Unisys? And how do you make sure in your role that the company stays focused on what the potential of service really is and not viewing it too narrowly?
Yeah, like I said at the start of my call, right? The field services technician is the face of IT.
Mm-hmm.
Every interaction, every touch point reflects on the Unisys brand, and it's extremely visible. The first thing that we think about at Unisys when that interaction happens is trust.
Mm-hmm.
With trust, you get everything, right? You get your renewals, you get expansion, you get a growth. Uh, so it's very important to equip that tech with whatever you can at that point of time. So, and that is the real reason why all the points that we spoke about, field services is not a back office, it's just not about cost and control, it's also about experience, is where all of this comes in. uh, at the end of the day, the customer, our customers, when they outsource a piece of service to us, they just don't want to be bothered
Mm-hmm.
about that service. They don't want to be micromanaging us or whatever it is, right? they have the core business to run. They have their, the main uh, agendas to kind of follow. So from a services growth perspective, we see a lot of shift towards a predictable model.
Mm-hmm.
We're also seeing a lot of outcome-based discussions in
Mm-hmm.
our conversations with customers, which is, again, like I said, uh, we are able to save X hours to you so that you can manufacture, X cars. Just an example, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is an example that we're seeing. So that is where the industry is slowly moving. There have been, a bit of at a recent AI conference there was a bit of argument in terms of outcome-based models have been there a while. Is Are they really working or not? Right?
Mm-hmm.
I would say yes, because that's what we are seeing at Unisys in terms of XLAs. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We've given back tens of thousands of hours to our customers
Mm-hmm.
in terms of that productive time, so that they can use it in a better fashion.
Yeah.
So tying it off, from a services standpoint, I say that it's no longer about cost. It's no
Mm-hmm.
longer about just a field services technician performing a ticket. It's about a reliable, predictable, and an outcome-based model that is that where the industry is moving towards, which
Mm-hmm.
we are seeing, written in and signed in form of our contracts.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. I mean, very well said. I agree with your point about outcomes. I think the research indicated that I think it was a very small percent, only 2%
yeah,
of respondents are currently, delivering outcomes-based service. To me, I don't think that's indicative of, the fact that it isn't a viable model. In fact, I think it will be increasingly so. I think what that's indicative of is it demands a high degree of digital sophistication, right? And not many companies are there yet. And it also is it's a business transformation. It's not a service transformation. It's not a digital transformation. It's both of those, but it's also a shift in how a company goes to market, how a company structures, its commercial business. And so I think, another reason that that number is still relatively low is because even for organizations that see the potential of outcomes and think that there is a play for that within their customer base, it's quite complex to make the transition from recognizing that opportunity to, shifting into that model. So yeah. But I think the way that Unisys looks at outcomes in relation to looking at the overall experience, right? It's then you're pairing what is the actual outcome, what is the actual value that we are delivering to our customers, but also what does that mean for them? And I think that that's a really powerful way to look at, what is possible today and as things continue to shift. So
yeah,
it's really good
absolutely.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, Vivek, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your perspective. And, we would love to have you back again in the future and talk about
love
how
to.
all this is landing and, what things look like in some time. So thank you for coming on.
Thanks a lot for having me, Sarah.
Of course. You can learn more by visiting the home of Unscripted at futureoffieldservice.com. The podcast is published in partnership with IFS. You can learn more at ifs.com. As always, thank you for listening.